All right, so tonight is Thakur Tuesdays. So we've got the Gospel of Shree Ramakrishna, and we are on the chapter called the Festival at Panahati, page 257, if you're reading Nikhilananda's translation. And we're at the paragraph that begins in the middle of the page, rather. And he says here, it was a hot day in June, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the steps of the Shiva temples in the temple garden. M arrived with ice and other offerings and sat down on the steps after saluting the master. The master to M. The husband of Mani Malik's granddaughter was here. He read a book that God could not be said to be quite wise and omniscient. Otherwise, why should there be so much misery in the world? As regards death, it would be much better to kill a man all at once instead of putting him through slow torture. Further, the author writes that if he himself were the creator, he would have created a better world. As shocking as that is, I think all of us have thought that at one point. We could have done a better job. But this idea of looking at the world and assuming that we're seeing the world as it is, it's easy to make all these judgments and to ask all these questions. But when somebody points out that you don't even know what you are, and yet you think you understand the nature of the universe or the happenings of the universe, it gets out of hand quite quickly. You know, we definitely are in a guesser's position with all of these things. And the mind is a very small tool for grasping the whole. So really, it's not a wonder that somebody would write something like this, and to argue over things like this. But really, to know this kind of answer, to know these kind of whys, would require such a huge swath of information that would be necessary to draw proper conclusions. You know, you would have to figure out everything. You would have to be an enlightened soul, to answer these questions. That he himself, if he were the creator, he could have made a better world, and listened to these words in surprise and made no comment. The master to M. Can a man ever understand God's ways? I too think of God sometimes as good and sometimes as bad. He has kept us deluded by his great illusion. Sometimes he wakes us up and sometimes he keeps us unconscious. One moment the ignorance disappears and the next moment it covers our mind. If you throw a brickbat into a pond covered with moss, you get a glimpse of the water, but a few moments later the moss comes dancing back and covers the water. One is aware of pleasure and pain, birth and death, disease and grief, as long as one is identified with the body. All these belong to the body alone and not to the soul. After the death of the body, perhaps God carries one to a better place. It is like the birth of a child after the pain of delivery. Attaining self-knowledge, one looks on pleasure and pain, birth and death, as a dream. So this hits right at the very root of what we were just talking about, this whole notion that we don't even know what we are or who we are. And until we know that, how can we know what the nature of this universe is, the nature of this presumed external? And the irony of it is that this is what spiritual life is all about, is trying to find out, hey, what's going on? what is this crazy head trip that I've been born into, with where all these odd things everywhere that just don't seem to make any sense, where you just can't figure out anything. How little we know. Can a 1-seer pot hold 10 seers of milk? See, the brain, the mind is just not big enough. Our intellect isn't big enough, and our access to necessary information for building these kinds of understanding is not enough. So we're really stuck from every direction. We're limited in this ideal. If ever a salt doll ventures into the ocean to measure its depth, it cannot come back and give us the information. It melts into the water and disappears. and oddly enough, this is exactly what happens with all of our enlightened folks. Once they learn this truth, their body melts, their body falls off. Its purpose has been fulfilled, and they go on to what, assuming they go somewhere, who knows? I mean, just perhaps they become one with everything. But these questions are impossible to answer for us. They're not something we'll ever be able to answer through material means, anyway. Through spiritual means, we'll know the answer, but we won't be able to share the answer because it will be unintelligible to the people still in the dream. You know, if once we find the truth of these things, we can't step back into time, space, causation, past, present, future. We can't step into that arena and talk about these things because these things are outside of that. There are no words, no sentence structures, no non-linear ways of expressing a truth that lies outside of mind. At dusk, the evening service began in the different temples. The master was sitting on a small couch in his room, absorbed in the contemplation of the Divine Mother. Several devotees were there. M was going to spend the night with the master. A little later, Shree Ramakrishna began to talk to a devotee privately on the veranda north of his room. He said, "It is good to meditate in the small hours of the morning and at dawn. One should also meditate daily after dusk." He instructed the devotee about meditation on the personal God and on the impersonal reality. After a time, he sat on the semicircular porch west of his room. It was about 9 o'clock. The master, those who come here will certainly have all of their doubts removed. What do you say? M. Oh, that's true, sir. A boat was moving in the Ganges, far away from the bank. The boatman began to sing. The sound of his voice floating over the river reached the master's ears, and he went into a spiritual mood. The hair on his body stood on end. He said to M, "Just feel my body." M was greatly amazed. He thought, the Upanishads describe Brahman as permeating the universe and the ether. Has that Brahman, as sound, touched the master's body? After a time, Sri Ramakrishna began to converse again. Those who come here must have been born with good tendencies. Isn't that true? It is true, sir. Adar must have good tendencies. Well, that goes without saying. Master, a guileless man easily realizes God. There are two paths, the path of righteousness and the path of wickedness. One should follow the path of righteousness. That is true, sir. If a thread has a single fiber sticking out, it cannot pass through the eye of a needle. Master, if a man finds a hair in the food he is chewing, he spits out the entire morsel. But you say that a man who has realized God cannot be injured by evil company. A blazing fire burns up even a plantain tree. I like this idea that because it's, I think Tagore mentions it. I think Holy Mother mentions it, and I know Jesus said it. You know that Jesus puts it in the sense that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And just this notion, that for us to enter, to have our realization, that the mother says that, there can't be a single fiber sticking out. There can't be even one desire in us in order to realize God. Every single one of them has to be taken care of, every desire. And yet we talk of camels going through the eye of a needle. So, all things are possible in God. And this is why we ultimately bow down to faith, bow down to grace in this, because it's not a matter of rules and regulations. This is a matter of what we are. And to understand it, we would have to know that. We would have to know who we are. We would have to understand the nature of the dream. And through understanding that, we wouldn't see objects. We wouldn't see separateness. We wouldn't be afraid. we would live in harmony, in a in Eden, as it were. Saturday, July 14th, 1883. Shree Ramakrishna arrived at Adar's house in Calcutta. Rakal, M, and other devotees were with the master. Adar had arranged to have Rajnarayan, the famous singer, and his party recite the Chandi. Rajnarayan began the recital in the worship hall. He sang, "I have surrendered my soul at the fearless feet of the Mother. Am I afraid of death anymore?" As the master listened, he became filled with divine fervor and joined the musicians. Now and then he improvised an appropriate line. Suddenly he went into samadhi and stood absolutely still. The singer sang again, "Who is the woman yonder who lights the field of battle? Darker her body gleams even than the darkest storm cloud, and from her teeth there flash the lightning's blinding flame. Disheveled hair is flying behind as she rushes about, undaunted in this war between the gods and the demons. Laughing her terrible laugh, she slays the fleeing asuras, and with her dazzling flashes she bears the horror of war. How beautiful on her brow the drops of moisture appear. About her dense black hair the bees are buzzing in swarms. The moon has veiled its face, beholding this sea of beauty. Tell me, who can she be, this sorceress, wonder of wonders? Shiva himself, like a corpse, lies vanquished at her feet. Kamalakanta has guessed who she is. With the elephant's gait, she is none other than Kali, mother of the worlds." Sri Ramakrishna was deep in samadhi. Saturday, July 21st, 1883. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when Sri Ramakrishna, with Ramlal and one or two other devotees, started from Dakshineshwar for Calcutta in a carriage. As the carriage passed the gate of the Kali temple, they met M coming on foot with 4 mangoes in his hand. The carriage stopped and M saluted the master. Sri Ramakrishna was going to visit some of his devotees in Calcutta. Master to M with a smile, "Come with us. We're going to Adar's house." M got joyfully into the carriage. Having received an English education, he did not believe in the tendencies inherited from previous births, but he had admitted a few days before that it was on account of Adar's good tendencies from past births that he had showed such great devotion to the master. Later on, he had thought about this subject and had discovered that he was not yet completely convinced about inherited tendencies. He had come to Dakshineshwar that day to discuss the matter with Ramakrishna. Master: "Well, what do you think of Adar?" M: "Oh, he has a great yearning for God." Master: "Adar too speaks very highly of you." M remained silent a while and then began to speak of past tendencies. M: "I haven't much faith in rebirth and inherited tendencies. Will that in any way injure my devotion to God?" The Master: "It is enough to believe that all is possible in God's creation. Never allow the thought to cross your mind that your ideas are the only true ones, and that those of others are false. Then God will explain everything. What can a man understand of God's activities? The facets of God's creation are infinite. I do not try to understand God's actions at all. I have heard that everything is possible in God's creation, and I always bear that in mind. Therefore, I do not give a thought to the world, but meditate on God alone. Once Hanuman was asked, "What day of the lunar month is it?" Hanuman said, "I don't know anything about the day of the month, the position of the moon and stars, or such things. I think of Rama alone." Can one ever understand the work of God? He is so near, and still it is not possible for us to know him. Balarama did not realize that Krishna was God. That is true, sir. Master, God has covered all of this with his Maya. He doesn't let us know anything. Maya is woman in gold, lust and greed. He who puts Maya aside to see God can see him. Once, when I was explaining God's actions to someone, God suddenly showed me the lake at Karmarpakor. I saw a man removing the green scum and drinking the water. The water was clear as crystal. God revealed to me that Satchitananda is covered by the scum of Maya. He who puts the green scum aside can drink the water. Let me tell you of a very secret experience. Once I had entered the wood near the pine grove. I was sitting there when I had a vision of something like a hidden door of a chamber. I couldn't see inside the chamber. I tried to bore a hole in the door with a nail knife, but I did not succeed. As I bored, the earth fell back into the hole and filled it. Then I suddenly made a very big opening. Uttering these words, the master remained silent. After a time, he said, "These are very profound words. I feel as if someone were pressing my mouth. I have seen with my own eyes that God dwells even in the sex organ. I saw him once in the sexual intercourse of a dog and a bitch. The universe is conscious on account of the consciousness of God. Sometimes I find that this consciousness wriggles about, as it were, even in small fishes." The carriage came to a crossing at Shova Bazar in Calcutta. The master continued, saying, "Sometimes I find that the universe is saturated with the consciousness of God, as the earth is soaked with water in the rainy season." Well, I see so many visions, but I never feel vain about them. And with a smile, "That you should speak of vanity, sir." Master, upon my word, I don't feel vanity, even in the slightest degree. M. There once lived a man in Greece, Socrates by name. A voice from heaven said that he was wise among men. Socrates was amazed at this revelation. He meditated on it a long time in solitude and then realized its significance. He said to his friends, "I alone of all people have understood that I do not know anything, but every man believes he is wise. In reality, all of us are ignorant." Master, now and then I think, what is it I know that makes so many people come to see me? Vaishnav Charan was a great pundit. He used to say to me, "I can find in the scriptures all the things you talk about, but do you know why I come to you? I come to hear them from your mouth. And all your words tally with the scriptures." Navadvip Goswami also said that the other day at the festival at Panahati. "You told us that day that by repeating the word Gita a number of times, one reverses it and it becomes Tagi, which refers to renunciation. Renunciation is the essence of the Gita." Navadvip Goswami supported your statement from the grammatical standpoint. Master, have you found anyone else resembling me? Any pundit or holy man? M. God has created you with his own hands, whereas he has made others by machine. All the others he has created according to law. Master, laughing to Ramlal and the other devotees. Listen to what he's saying. Shree Ramakrishna laughed for some time and said at last, "Really and truly, I have no pride, not even the slightest bit." M. Knowledge does us good in one respect at least. It makes us feel that we do not know anything, that we are nothing. Master, right you are. I am nothing. I am nobody. Do you believe in English astronomy? M. It is possible to make new discoveries by applying the laws of Western astronomy. Observing the irregular movements of Uranus, the astronomers looked through their telescopes and discovered Neptune shining in the sky. They can also foretell eclipses. Master, oh yes, that is so. The carriage drove on. They were approaching Adar's house. Shree Ramakrishna said to M, dwell in the truth, and you will certainly realize God. Dwell in the truth. Think about what is true. This would be a big help in meditation, because that's what we're trying to do in meditation, is to dwell in the truth. And that, what is that truth? I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. And so as you're sitting there repeating the name, become aware of yourself listening to the name. And as you become aware of yourself listening to the name, understand that that is not the body. And gather yourself more in the direction then of not body. And then see yourself watching the mind, watching the mantra repeat in the mind. Dwell in the truth. You are not the mind. And pull yourself away from mind. And you'll find yourself in a small space in the center of the heart. Dwell on the truth. What is the truth? You are love itself. You are wisdom itself. You are the existence that you self-experience. Dwell in the truth. Don't be pulled out back into the body, back into the mind. Dwell in the truth, and you will certainly realize God. You said the other day to Navadvip Goswami, "O God, I want thee. Please do not delude me with your world-bewitching Maya. I want to realize you." Master, yes, one should be able to say that from one's innermost soul. This is a good practice, to say that. Say it out loud, even now to the beloved. Say, I want to realize you. And then listen to yourself say it. And are you sincere? Can you see any quivering in the voice of your mind as you say that? I had a weird experience. It wasn't an experience. It was just something that I did back in 99. It was when I had just had that experience with moksha prana, and spiritual life was very new to me. And I was very excited every time I went to meditate. I thought that was it. I was going to realize God any second. And I remember I went out for a walk one night in not Rishikesh, in Mayavati, down the road by the ashram. And I stood there at the corner of this pasture, and I just had this idea that I wanted to bow down to God. But I didn't want to do it with even a single hair of insincerity. And so I stood there with this desire to bow down before God, but wanting it to be utterly authentic, utterly real. And I stood there trying to gather my mind and trying to put it myself before the Lord, and trying to have the impetus inside to bow down before God. And I stood there, I think I stood there for almost a half an hour, realizing that I couldn't muster a true desire, a desire that went to my soul, like he's talking about here, to bow down earnestly before God. And so in the end, I just bowed down and I apologized. And I said, I'll learn how to bow to you at some point. And so this is the level of sincerity and earnestness that we're seeking out. It's a good practice to sit and talk to God and say, I want to realize you. And then sit with God and look at yourself saying those words. And let him teach you sincerity. Let him teach you earnestness while you're together. Because it's so hard these days for us to come up with even a single thing that we're earnest about, because we've got so many layers of so many things inside. Even our own thoughts, we only splash about in the top inch of them and are utterly unaware of the billions of thoughts that led to and underlie our observance of reality at this moment. This is why we go for a simple life. This is why we renounce and try and keep things to a minimum. Acquaintances, work, distractions. Keep these things to a minimum so that they don't cloud all of these layers in your mind, so that we can finally become guileless people. Remember, we read about guileless people early on, how easy it is for them to realize God. Because guileless people don't have these layers of calculation going on in their mind. They don't have these layers of reasons of why they do everything or don't do everything. To live in the moment, to respond from your ocean of Satchitananda, that's the only earnestness we can know. That's the only freedom we can know. Not to be locked up in the ego, not to be confused, not to be worldly people with minds dwelling on change. Yes, one should be able to say that from one's innermost soul. Shree Ramakrishna arrived at Adar's house and took a seat in the parlor. Ramlal, Adar, M, and the other devotees sat near him. Rakal was staying with his father in Calcutta, master to Adar. Didn't you let Rakal know that I was coming? Yes, sir, I've sent for him. I've sent him word. Finding that the master was eager to see Rakal, Adar at once sent his carriage to fetch him. Adar had been yearning to see the master that day, but he had not definitely known that Sri Ramakrishna was coming. Adar, you haven't been here for a long time. I prayed to God today that you might come. I even shed tears. And the master was pleased and said with a smile, You don't mean that. It was dusk, and the lamps were lighted. Sri Ramakrishna saluted the Divine Mother with folded hands, sat quietly absorbed in meditation. Then he began to chant the names of God in his sweet voice. Govinda, Govinda, Satchitananda, Hari Hari. Every word he uttered showered nectar on the ears of the devotees. Ramlal sang in praise of Kali, the Divine Mother. Your name I have heard, O consort of Shiva, is the destroyer of our fear. And so on you I cast my burden. Save me, save me, O kindly Mother. Out of your womb the world is born, and you it is that do pervade it. Are you Kali? Are you Radha? Who can save rightly? Mother, in every living creature you have your dwelling place. As Kundalini, you live in the lotus of the Muladhara. Above it lies the Svadhisthana, where the four-petaled lotus blossoms. There also you make your home, O mystic power of Kundalini. In the four petals of that flower, in the Vajrasana's 6 petals, at the navel of the Manipura, the blue 10-petaled lotus flower. Through the pathway of Shushumna, you ascend and enter there. O Lady of the Lotuses, in lotus blossoms you do dwell. Beyond them lies the lake of nectar, the region of the heart, where the 12-petaled lotus flower enchants the eye with scarlet flame. When you open it, O Mother, touching it with your lotus feet, the age-long darkness of the heart instantly scatters at your sight. Above, in the throat, in the 16-petaled lotus flower of smoky hue, within the petals of this flower there lies concealed a subtle space, transcending which one sees at length the universe in space dissolve. And higher yet, between the eyebrows, blossoms the lotus of 2 petals, where the mind of man remains a prisoner and past controlling. From this flower, the mind desires to watch the sportive play of life. Highest of all, within the head, the soul enthralling center is, where shines the 1,000-petaled lotus, Mahadeva's dwelling place. Having ascended to his throne, O spouse of Shiva, sit beside him. You are the primal power, O Mother, she whose senses are controlled. The yogis meditate on you as Uma, great Himalaya's daughter. You are the power of Shiva. Put to death my ceaseless cravings. Grant that I never fall again into the ocean of this world. Mother, you are the primal power. You, the five cosmic principles. Who can ever hope to know you, who are even beyond all principles? Only for your bhakta's sake do you assume your various forms. But when your devotees' five senses merge in the five elements, Mother, it is yourself alone that he beholds as formless truth. As Ramlal sang the lines, above in the throat is the 16-petaled lotus flower of smoky hue. Within the petals of this flower there lies concealed a subtle space, transcending which one sees at length the universe in space dissolve. Master said to M, listen, this is known as the vision of Satchitananda, the formless Brahman. The Kundalini rising above the Vishuddha chakra enables one to see everything as Akasha. M, yes, sir. Master, one attains the absolute by going beyond the universe and its created beings conjured up by Maya. By passing beyond the nada, one goes into samadhi. By repeating Om, one goes beyond the nada and attains samadhi. Adhar served Shree Ramakrishna with fruits and sweets. The master left for Jadu Malik's house. Shree Ramakrishna entered the room in Jadu's house where the Divine Mother was worshipped. He stood before the image, which had been decorated with flowers and garlands and sandal paste, and which radiated a heavenly beauty and splendor. Lights were burning before the pedestal. A priest was seated before the image. The master asked one of his companions to offer a rupee in the shrine according to the Hindu custom. Sri Ramakrishna stood a long time with folded hands before the blissful image, the devotees standing behind him. Gradually he went into samadhi, his body becoming motionless and his eyes fixed. With a long sigh, he came back to the world of the senses and said, still intoxicated with divine fervor, Mother, goodbye. But he could not leave the place. He remained standing there. Addressing Ramlal, he said, please sing that song, then I shall be all right. Ramlal sang, O Mother, consort of Shiva, you have deluded this world. The master went to the drawing room with the devotees. Every now and then he said, O Mother, please dwell in my heart. Jadu was sitting in the drawing room with his friends. The master sat down, still in an ecstatic mood, and sang, O Mother, blissful ever as you are, do not deprive your worthless child of bliss. Finishing the song, he said to Jadu, still in that state of divine fervor, well, sir, what shall I sing? Shall I sing, Mother, am I thine 8-month-old child? He sang, Mother, am I your 8-month-old child? Your red eyes cannot frighten me. My riches are your lotus feet, which Shiva holds upon his breast. Yet when I seek my heritage, I meet with excuses and delays. A deed of gift I hold in my heart, attested to by your husband Shiva. I will sue you if I must. With a single point I will win. If you oppose me, you will learn what sort of mother's son I am. This bitterly contested suit between the mother and her son, what sport it is, says Ram Prasad. I shall not cease tormenting you until you yourself shall yield the fight and take me in your arms at last. That's that tamasic bhakti that Vivekananda, that Ramakrishna talked about, that tamasic bhakti. Threaten to sue the mother if she doesn't give you your inheritance. It's the beauty of it is it's this we can speak this way to the divine because we're not beggars, because we are heirs. Thou art that. You are that worthy, beautiful, divine light of love. You are the very image of the beloved of God. And so you can walk into the temple. Give me my vision. Give me my birthright. I want to see you. I want to see you today. I want to see you now. And if you can say that, sincere to the core, that very moment, you'll have your bliss. Coming down to nearly to a normal state, the master said, I shall take some of the Divine Mother's prasad. Then he ate a little of it. Jadoo Malik was sitting next to him with several friends, among whom were a few of his flatterers. The master with a smile. Well, why do you keep these buffoons with you? Jadoo with a smile. Well, suppose they are. Won't you redeem them? The master smiling. The water of the Ganges cannot purify a wine jar. Jadoo had promised the master that he would arrange a recital of the Chandi in his house. Some time had eclipsed, but he had not yet kept his promise. Master, well, what about that recital of the Chandi? Jadoo, I've been busy with many things. I haven't been able to arrange it. Master, how's that? A man gives his word and doesn't take it back. The words of a man are like the tusks of an elephant. They come out, but they do not go back. A man must be true to his word. What do you say? Jadoo with a smile. You're right. Master, you're a shrewd man. You do a thing after much calculation. You are like a Brahmin who selects a cow that eats very little, supplies plenty of dung, and gives horrendous amounts of milk. Everyone laughs. After a time, he said to Jadoo, I now understand your nature. It is half warm and half cold. You are devoted to God and also to the world. The master and his devotees were served by Jadoo with sweets and fruit, and then the party left for the home of Kailat Ghosh. Kailat Ghosh's house was a big mansion, but it looked deserted. As the master entered the house, he fell into an ecstatic mood. M. Ramlal and a few other devotees were with him. Their host was Kailat Ghosh's brother-in-law. He was an old man, a Vaishnava. His body was stamped with the name of God according to the Vaishnava custom, and he carried in his hand a small bag containing his rosary. He had visited the master now and then at Dakshineshwar, but most of the Vaishnavas held narrow religious views. They criticized the Vedantists and the followers of the Shiva cult. Shree Ramakrishna soon began to speak. Master, it is not good to feel that one's own religion alone is true and that all of the other ones are false. God is one only and not two. Different people call on him by different names, some as Allah, some as God, others as Krishna, Shiva, and Brahman. It is like the water in a lake. Some drink it at one place and call it jal. Others at another place call it pani, and still others at a third place call it water. The Hindus call it jal, the Christians water, the Muslims pani. But it is one, and it is the same thing. Opinions are but paths. Each religion is only a path leading to God, as rivers come from the different directions and ultimately become one in the same ocean. The truth established in the Vedas, the Puranas, and the Tantras is but one Satchitananda. In the Vedas, it is called Brahman. In the Puranas, it is called Krishna, Rama, and so on. And in the Tantras, it is called Shiva. The one Satchitananda is also called Brahman, Krishna, and Shiva. The devotees were silent. That's a wonderful thing. That this, that verse we were talking about in the Rig Veda. I mean, the Rig Veda is so ancient. To know that the stage was set for religions with this notion that truth is one, though the sages have called it by many names. To think that if anybody was paying attention, we would have seen this from the very beginning. Your body is a temple within which dwells the divine. You are that. All of these truths we've had with us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And yet we still treat them as discrete and separate, emaciated on their own, separate from all the others. Not knowing this beautiful, 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 vast ocean of devotion and knowledge and learning and wisdom that we've got available to us if we could just stretch our mind. Stretch our mind. A Vaishnava devotee. Sir, why should one think of God at all? Master. If a man really has that knowledge, then he is indeed liberated through though living in a body. So what is that? Sir, why should one think of God at all? Why is the need? If God is all there is, if everything is God, then why should we have to make our thoughts go in a particular way? Are not every thought God? And when I first heard that thing, why should a man think of God at all? Of course, inside me, that little defender jumped up, was like, what? What is he saying? How can he say such a thing? But Tagore, without an ego, takes no offense, doesn't feel any of that pang of ego. And he says, you're right. If you could really say that, if you could really know that, then yes, you would indeed find liberation, even though you still have a body. Not all, by any means, believe in God. They simply talk. The worldly minded have heard from someone that God exists and that everything happens by his will, but it is not their inner belief. Do you know what a worldly man's idea of God is like? It is like the children swearing by God when they quarrel. They've heard that word while listening to their elderly aunts quarreling. Is it possible for all to comprehend God? God has created the good and the bad, the devoted and the impious, the faithful and the skeptical. The wonders that we see all exist in his creation. In one place, there is mere manifestation of his power, more manifestation of his power, and in another, less. The sun's light is better reflected by water than by earth, and still better by a mirror. Again, there are different levels among the devotees of God, superior, mediocre, and inferior. All this has been described in the Gita. Vaishnava. That's true, sir. Master. The inferior devotee says God exists, but he is very far off, up there in heaven. The mediocre devotee says God exists in all beings as life and consciousness. The superior devotee says it is God himself who has become everything. Whatever I see is only a form of God. It is he alone who has become Maya, the universe, and all living beings. Nothing exists but God. Vaishnava. Does anyone ever attain that state of mind? Master. One cannot attain it unless one has seen God. But there are signs that a man has had the vision of God. A man who has seen God sometimes behaves like a madman. He laughs, he weeps and dances and sings. Sometimes he behaves like a child of 5 years old, guileless, generous, without vanity, unattached to anything, but not under the control of any of the gunas, always blissful. Sometimes he behaves like a ghoul. He doesn't differentiate between things that are pure and impure. He sees no difference between clean things and unclean things, and sometimes he's like an inert thing, staring vacantly. He cannot do any work. He cannot strive for anything. Was the master making a veiled reference to his own state of mind? The master to the Vaishnava devotee, the feeling of thee and thine is the outcome of knowledge. I and mine comes from ignorance. Knowledge makes one feel, oh God, you are the doer, and I am the instrument. Oh God, to you belongs all of this, body, mind, house, family, living beings, and the universe. All these are yours. Nothing belongs to me. An ignorant person says, oh, God is there, very far off. The man of knowledge knows that God is right here, very near, in the heart, that he has assumed all forms, dwells in all hearts as that inner controller.